Here comes my
one meeting
window.
of the year, I think, for the whole year of the event. So yeah, you should talk to Jenny, she could tag on yours and maybe with hers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, good evening. All right, Ed.
Are the commissioners supposed to be using it? Seven.
Seven.
Just so this is
This is the Board Advisory Committee meeting, and then
the joint meeting starts at 7. Starts at 7. Or approximately 7. Oh. Yeah, because you need to be here otherwise. Yeah.
So it's now 5 after, with your permission, we'll start our meeting, because we got to be through by 7. Approval of minutes from March 16th.
Go ahead. You go first.
Well, I just have one note. Well, I do have personal issues. I'm not off of the PAC, so it should read John Hurley under welcome. Keeper and science living for Lisa. I'm not sure which John that is.
Yeah, it's alternate John Yeomans is the one that was leaving.
Right.
Yeah. So we need to make that correction.
Yeah, we go back.
Okay.
Any other corrections or additions?
Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead, Patty.
So on page 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down, there's a sentence that goes, ends with the Commissioner's decision to determine the version of facts that they wish to use. That isn't, see, there is no version of facts, it is the facts. So I would like to move that. You want to stricken the word? Yep.
Version of.
Those two words out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was
Facts.
We have facts.
Yeah, one
We have
more.
facts, not versions of facts.
The final proposed change is, it says members discuss the timing, and this is on page 3, just before action items. So members discuss the timing associated with receiving a copy of the memos from Ms. Hoover. I think we need to be more precise there. The discussion was about receiving a copy of Ms. Hoover's January 7th, 2011 comments on the public participation report.
So can I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I so move.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Increase public comment. Lots of members of the public here, one member at least. Monica, would you like to provide comment?
Sure. Okay, thank you. Should I just stand? So I saw your comments on my comments, and I understand that your focus was on whether the comments would change the recommendations.
I'm sorry, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, sure, certainly. My name is Monica Hoover. I'm a citizen here in Olympia.
Oh, okay.
I'm interested in the activities of the Port. I'm mostly interested in the land, the development projects of the Port. I consider those to be something that, as citizens, we should all be very involved and interested in.
So you're speaking about the comments that were developed on your report? On your
Yes, yes, I just glanced at those after I came in here.
If you want, we can get your comments when we get to that on the agenda. Or if you want to give them out, your call.
No, we need to follow the agenda. This is the public comment period. We need to give them out.
Sounds good.
Accept that. Go ahead.
Okay, so I saw your comments, and I understand that your focus was on whether the comments would change the recommendations. I understand that your conclusion is that it does not. I consider accuracy to be important itself, just as a point of order, that things, especially points posted on the website, are accurate. Just as you just went through a process right now of making your minutes reflect accurately. So, but I also respect your conclusion, and I don't know that you should spend this whole meeting on that, or any chunk of this meeting on that. I don't know that that really isn't the focus of my involvement in the Port. But accuracy matters to me, and so I took the time to review the report and comment on it. My primary interest in the Port is in the real estate development activities of the Port of Olympia. As an example of the things I noticed at North Point, there was roughly a $30 million public investment to remediate the Cascade Pole site. Not North Point, depending on how you look at it, but all Cascade Pole, that's public investment. I'll focus on just one issue as an example of what went on in that public process, since this is part of the public process. So public process needs to really be authentically work with the people for it to be accepted, for you to get results that are meaningful to the commissioners, and for you to have a good, successful project that doesn't have a lot of controversy around it. As an example, during the public workshops in fall of 2009, people were told that courts can't run parks. Even though people were told this, the majority of the commenters still talked about open space in their comments. A quick check of several Port District websites reveals that Port Districts in Washington do operate parks. For example, the Port of Seattle operates 10 parks, the Port of Skamania operates 8, the Port of Kalama operates 2, the Port of Whitman County operates Boyer Park and Marina, 56 acres in size, and the Port of Port Townsend operates 1 park in an area it describes as undeveloped, but encourages people to visit and walk and enjoy the view. The response of MGR Development to those comments was to move the hotel back and add what was called the wedding meadow. Paul Inman and I met with the representative of MGR Development, and it was clear that public access to that area wasn't a priority for their organization. You can imagine why it wouldn't be. It's a hotel, and they would want that area exclusively for the guests of their hotel. But where we have such huge public investment, I think it's important that public good be measured, that when we have the port engaging in economic development, and there's our public resources, both the land and the assets of the port are involved, I really want the questions to be asked of who is benefiting? Are those benefits widely distributed through the community, or do they accrue to a few? Just the phrase economic development can be so misused. So I think the port has tremendous opportunities out there at North Point and all the development projects that they do to really be of service to our community, to work well with the people, and to do projects that are truly beneficial and a good use of our public resources. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Update on strategic business planning. Randy's not here. I didn't tell him. I'm working on that committee, and my boss and I are proposing us to make a report. That's Ed, you can share your participating as well. Please. Go ahead, Mark.
I've missed a few of the meetings, though, so you're probably ahead of me. We've been drafting the mission statement, the values, and vision. And this whole process has been one of evolution as we draft and as we get further into now establishing some goals, which each of the members of the team were challenged with going out and talking to various people, constituents, and coming up with some goals. As we've seen the drafts of those goals, we've checked those back to the mission, vision, and values, and so it's an iterative process that we're going through. I think probably in the next couple of weeks we'll be ready with a set of somewhat second series of drafts, which we'll be presenting to the Commission to just get their comments on it. And so this will be an ongoing process, I envision, probably for the next couple of months before the team and the committee itself is ready to say, here's some drafts, give us your comments back on them. I will say from a personal standpoint, the documents that we have that were done back in the late 90s and the wording of those documents, I think what's taking place right now and what I'm seeing take shape is a huge, huge improvement. It gives a lot more focus to what this port is all about, including about its economic development mission, and trying to refine that, but yet to keep it succinct and brief. As Don keeps telling us, the less words we use in some cases, the better. So my report would be that I'm really delighted to see the progress that we're getting. As you may recall, Frank and Don are are on the committee. Commissioner McGregor sits on that, myself, and a couple of other staff members. So it's been a robust discussion. It takes us almost, and you think your meetings go a long time, it takes us an hour to change 3 words at times, but frankly, I think it's really worth it. This is going to pay off in the long run.
Thank you. I think Riley's on the committee too, but Frank, is there anything you want to add?
I'd like to add one other item, which is particularly important in light of what our next agenda item is, which is we have public participation in as a draft value right now from the steering committee. And the question we are endeavoring to answer is, with respect to the strategy that we're going to put together and mission, vision, goals, and all this, how are we going to involve the public? And we're using the public participation report as a point of departure for that discussion, especially the section that has the matrix with, the intent is the following, here are the different techniques one can use. And we haven't come to a conclusion yet. We just open that discussion up and we'll discuss it at the next meeting.
Thank you. Anything else? You all have covered it pretty well. Let's go on. Frank and Owen, you're on next to talk about your analysis of
Okay.
the letter motion.
So thanks to Jesse for getting all this nice renewable resource paper together for us. So if you look, you'll see you have a set of PowerPoint charts. And there's another attachment, which is an Excel spreadsheet which has a lot of details that we were not planning to brief today, but if you have questions about it, we can certainly be ready to answer those. And we have the original letter that went to Riley and to Clydia, which is the subject of our independent assessment. So I will just, I'll start and then she's going to jump in with me here. So, our summary. The background, we received, the chair and the chair of the committee received a letter critiquing the public participation report. You can use the word comment because that's what the cover letter says, comments here. The comment is contained in the letter dated January 7th, 2010. It actually, that's a typo. That's what the letter has, but it actually was received on 2011. That's a little more detail. And we brought this up in discussion in our last meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the next slide, basically during our last meeting, during the public comment portion of our meeting, Ms. Hoover expressed a concern. And one of her concerns is that the report contained incorrect information. And when she said that, I spoke up. And I said if something was incorrect, I believe we should look at it, do an assessment, and make recommendations. And so I guess I was volunteered. And then Frank raised his hand, so we worked as a team. And I would say that we found minor errors. And as Frank continues with the next slide, I would say, once we finish with this, I think we should move on because I believe that we're wasting too much time on this. And based upon what we did, the information that we found on it, I think we should move forward. So, Frank.
Okay. So the way to relate my Excel spreadsheet to the rest of our last group. So the first column is an excerpt out of the letter. And so I just did a copy and paste. The next column, so that's column A. Column C is our discussion of that excerpt. So if there was, you can read the details here and you can see how this works out. And then column E is the recommendation that Owen and I are making with respect to the report. So most of this is no change. And the reason it is no change is because it's either a matter of perspective or emphasis. The report made statements that included data and results of research, and also had its emphasis. The critique, in some cases, had a different emphasis, and very often that emphasis would be changed if you looked at the entire paragraph that material that we pulled out of it, so I would say, you'll see in some of my, some of our discussion, we were going to say, gee, that item was really out of context. So, the general findings, differences in perspective, some differences in emphasis, and a few what I would call harmless errors. The comment that we received endorsed public participation, but did not comment on the report recommendations, which, of course, provide some ideas for the commissioners in terms of building a strategy of public participation, using different techniques, and things like that. So that's probably good news. You know, maybe that means that those recommendations stand again in the face of the critique. And the other thing I noticed in critique is that statements would be made, you know, we don't like this, or we don't like that, but no constructive alternatives were provided, as in the report says, you know, sentence A, B, C, and we think it should be D, E, F. Okay, so that doesn't, so that's why the Excel spreadsheet is possibly of interest to you. Now, getting into the details, a little bit more, the things to change. Change one date. That was the date that the petitions were handed off to the commissioners. So if I look at my Excel spreadsheet, that will be
Would you look at column E?
column E, correct.
Number 19.
All right, that's it, correct the report. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, so that was just a date issue, and that's easy to change that. In row 10, column E, there was in the critique, the authors had the help of an attorney to add additional possible regulations or laws that pertain to the report. Since owner and A, not lawyers, B, the report was not intended to be a legal document, and C, we don't think it's worthwhile to subject to a legal counsel review, I would just propose that we had, after the original sentence in the report, just add, there may be additional permanent laws, however that possibility doesn't affect the report recommendations. Because if you look over to the first column, you'll see there are quite a few regulations that are cited. And I don't think it would add substance to the report to have the report's counsel go through and verify that these are pertinent or not pertinent, because it turns out they aren't relevant to the recommendations. So that is the second possibility. And then there's one other item that we are proposing recommending another change. So if we go over to row 14, you'll see that there was a discussion in page 11, and it had to do with properly citing a letter that described to Sherry Arnstein. And so what I would propose, rather than do additional research, which is not necessary, is just in front of the word ladder in our report, we just put Arnstein's ladder. Because that paragraph, which contains this material, actually cites the reference that was used in the report, and that doesn't go back to primary references, it cites the secondary reference we used, and that secondary reference, it cites the primary references. So if you want to do nested references, you have an opportunity. But again, I don't think that adds a great deal of value to the report, or any value. So one word addition.
So just to be clear, that's a modification of the
Oh,
recommendation.
yeah, so
So we add a source citation for the latter, but we don't
So it's-
anything in the appendix.
Any questions for Frank or Owen? Did you envision, Frank and Owen, after move to take the recommendations and the modified report accordingly?
Correct.
So-
And I don't know exactly what the process is for modifying the report.
I don't either, but it's-
You know, when one of us goes, it's like adding 3 words and striking something out.
Oh, sir, you want to make a motion to that effect then?
Okay, I move that the advisory committee accept our recommendations.
Second?
Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adopted. Thank you very much for doing that review.
We're not using Excel spreadsheets every day.
Yes, you did a good job. And it turns out that our chairman is now here, and so I'm going to turn the floor over to him. Go ahead. On the next one.
Better get a sign on one of his chairman.
Yeah.
In fact, it says Riley Moore, that's you. There you go. I know who you are.
I was wondering who it was. Yeah. Okay, so Steve Garrett, I think you're next to talk about the real estate investment.
I am. First of all, I just have to, Frank and Owen, I mean, the way you guys dissected this and put this back together,
Fantastic.
what an incredible amount of energy and work. I mean, I just think that this document is just, I felt incredibly well put together and a tremendous amount of work by you people. And then, I mean, I just think that this has just been, way to go. I mean, it's just a little overwhelmed. And, you know, I'm sitting here, gee, I need to follow up with this. So it's just,
Yeah, in terms of process, Ed, I have the public participation report in electronic form, and I can incorporate these changes and resubmit it to be substituted for the version that's up there now. Is that acceptable?
Easily done.
I'll send it to Jesse.
And I'll repost
So
on my
we-
website.
okay.
One question, do you want me to redline the change, or do you want to just,
Why don't you redline it and we'll have that available in the file, but then do an accept of the change.
okay, good.
Okay, our reinvestment task. Well, this has been kind of an interesting journey. I must say, I don't know how much progress we made, other than the fact that I felt, and I'm speaking for the groupers, so I hope this is okay, that I think that the matrix that was in place originally did a reasonable job of approaching this task. If I could, I think we've all seen this. Can I get this around the room real quick here? Everyone get a copy here, where it consists of a site evaluation considerations, and the second part of the report that was done are some feasibility considerations. So the dilemma I think that we have as a group when we first met is kind of define what we were charged with, you know, from the commissioners. And I think what the conclusion that we came up to, and jump in for any time, it wasn't our role to go out, and we'd be more than happy to do that if we were charged with it. Right. It wasn't our role to go out and find projects for future. AJ, do it.
Wait a minute, it's a two-pager.
It's a two-pager.
It's a two-pager, all right.
So you've got a feasibility and you've got a site evaluation. Okay, so that's what you got in front of you. Okay, so I think my point is, I think as we met, I think we had to come to the conclusion as a group that it wasn't our role to bring to the commissioners investment opportunities. What are we missing?
We need one more feasibility consideration.
Okay, here we go. I feel like I'm leaving people, would you like a copy of this? Site evaluation feasibility, yes?
I can get more.
Okay,
Later.
okay. So anyway, my point is, we felt that was the conclusion that we came up to with what is in place for analysis. I think it's really sufficient. As an example, back I think and one of the things that we used as the benchmark, back in 1998, I believe, the Miller Trust, help me out, Miller Trust? Miller Trust has some property down in the Grand Mound area that the port, and again, I was not involved with it, the port looked extensively at that particular piece of property, whether or not we wanted to move forward on that or not. And the analysis that was done was very, I thought it was very complete, very thorough. So as we went through the feasibility considerations, and other various things that we needed to take a look at, we felt that they applied those principles, they applied those things in that example on the Miller Trust property. So assuming that if the commissioners are presented with another investment opportunity, they would apply these same principles in doing the analysis of it. You know, one of the things, back to this public participation issue, one of the things that was raised briefly in one of our discussions was, where is the overlay of the public participation process in this as well? In other words, if we're looking at a piece of ground or whatever, or a building, whatever the case may be, you know, where is, you know, how does the public participation process fit in that analysis as well? And I think that's, you know, I'm not here to answer that question. I'm just throwing that question out. So I think what's in place, I don't want to beat the issue to death, seems to be, in my estimation, a workable model, if you will. And certainly, you know, the members that were on the committee, what your spin on it was.
I'm coming in, as an alternate, I didn't take in, I just have to supply the committee with information and background on some things to think about. This site evaluation and feasibility considerations are really what I would call a go, no-go model. In other words, somebody walks in with a piece of property or it gets called a piece of property, and you would take a look at these and say, is there a wetland study available? You know, is there a tree survey available? You know, you look at all those kind of things to kind of say, is this thing even going to kind of fit within the framework of what is the goals and vision, values, and mission statement of the port set out? Because all of these came from, as well as the report, all the mission, values, and vision, and along with the associated goals that the port had in place from, for lack of a better word, comprehensive plan that was put together in 94, 95. And we realize that's kind of been superseded, but the point is it met those. But there's still other, you know, this is a public policy question, and there are other things that I think the committee would like to take a look at that go beyond this kind of go, no go. And that would be things like, for example, if you bought a piece of property, would you, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, would you lease it or would you sell it? Would you know, at the airport and in the industrial park here, we're kind of bound by the FAA restrictions of leasing. But if the port went out and bought money with its own funds, it could do whatever it wanted to. It could sell if it wanted to. Another public policy, do you want to provide incentives? For example, there are ports around the state that if you bring X number of jobs, you get a reduction in your price. Is that something is of interest to the port? I mean, to encourage job creation. The port could say, you know, what we really want to do for, I'll give you another example. Could say, you know, we want to help ecologically, and we want to focus on brownfields. We only want to pick up things that need to be remediated in our county. There's a whole lot of other kind of policy questions. So I think we're kind of at committee-wise is that we want to kind of now go back and take a look at those kind of pertinent policy questions that the Port Commission should think about asking themselves.
What I think would be, I think interesting is that to an extent is take it to the next level. If the commissioners were to say to us, okay, this group of subcommittee, all right, we've established the parameters of what we want to do, and this kind of this checklist, I guess in my world is, okay, let's go put it to use. Go bring us something that has value, that we could apply all this to, that could maybe be a catalyst for jobs in the community. and again, that's a question for the commissioners. But I guess for me, I think that what would be exciting and dynamic for us as a group is if we get in that arena and the commissioners say to us, let's find projects, let's do things, let's take it to the next level. What can you bring to the table that would have value for the community and the port? Because I think the framework, I think the foundation is solid. I think it's time to go to take the next jump with it. But that's just.
Thank you. Claudia.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. First of all, public participation is addressed on the site evaluation consideration. It says, is there community support for the intended use? If the commission adopts our recommendations, there will be means to find out the answer to that question. My second comment has to do with, does the site allow fulfillment of the port's role as economic catalyst and facilitator? Actually, some drafts of the visions, mission, and values were presented to the commission a couple of weeks ago, and recreation was one of the items. I can't remember if it was in the mission or the values. So my recommendation would be you need to update that box to be consistent. Maybe you should generalize it and say, does the site allow fulfillment of one or more of the port's values or something like that? Because this is too narrow for what I saw was presented to them.
And that's what we're trying to get at point. You change those values, vision, and goals, that could change this.
The third comment I have is, and I haven't seen the Grand Mound example, but that was a case where you decided not to procure land. I think you should look at a case where the court did decide to procure land, and with hindsight, was it a good decision? And my understanding is the most recent land acquisition by the court was the old Shell terminal. I don't know what the reasons for, but like I say, I think for the report that you're doing to be complete, you should have a no decision example and a yes decision example.
I think that's an excellent idea, because it certainly gives a slant on the process that took place in an affirmative act,
Right, and that's also more recent than the Grand Mound evaluation. And then my final comment is, I think it would be worthwhile contacting other courts and seeing what site evaluation and feasibility considerations they use.
Well, we've made some recommendations to the commission already. A couple of meetings ago, we had about 10 of those. It's what we thought would be pertinent to discuss maybe when they sit down and talk to us.
So that's going to be the next.
That's going to be the next
meeting.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I really want to understand what we're doing. So we're looking at site evaluation considerations. So what is the port currently using? I mean, this is 2011. I'm pretty sure that there's a current plan in place, right? They procure land, and I know they do the different business aspects of what they do with that land. So are we making recommendations to something that they're currently doing, or are we trying to rewrite a new plan, or can somebody kind of like fill me in on it?
Eber.
Well, I think the port, this actually, support staff have this available for them right now.
You need to distinguish, he's not an employee.
I'm not sure.
I'm serious about that. The answer is yes, we have been using this for quite some time. We have examples, frankly, of acquisitions we've made that we didn't use this, and that would also serve the purpose you talked about, is we should have used it.
I have one comment to what you said. You're sort of hinting at Heber, and I think a little bit you too, Steve. I think that the commissioners were looking for something along the lines of what you're talking about. Should you folks are in the real estate business locally, not you, Heber, but maybe you're beginning to be, since you're retired. You folks that are in the real estate business, and at the time the committee was formed, you and Lisa, and there were some others who were on that committee. I think the commission were looking for some sense of you as local business people. Do you think the port should be seeking opportunities to invest in real estate? And I think that's one thing. So I would suggest you ask them during the work session, was there more that they wanted you to do?
Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
I realized there was some some back and forth on that question. In fact, it was in a meeting that was held here, and you had raised that before, and I think the PAC has discussed that before. And again, my goal here is to try to just provide you facts. So I actually talked to Commissioner McGregor about this because he was very precise and clear that what he wanted was a review. I don't mean to speak with him, but I recall very specifically that he wanted a review and a critique of this matrix, and if there were some improvements on it, that's what they were looking for. Now, in the context of that discussion, Commissioner Davis talked about he wants to do economic development, and he was rather vague about it, but that discussion then took place, but that was not what the commission, as Commissioner McGregor recalled, and was the final word as the president to say, review the matrix and tell us whether this makes sense or not. I would recommend that you ask that question tonight of the commission and get that clarification, but that was Commissioner McGregor's recommendation or recollection, and that was mine also. Because if you recall, I also was stirring the pot quite a bit on this about the fact that this was done completely out of the context of the financial requirements that the court is looking at for its core business. So while it's great to theoretically talk about this, when we look at what it's going to take to maintain the marine terminal, in fact, one of your brethren just asked one of my staff, what are you going to do with all the money that the port's making, because we're doing quite well in the terminal? And I can tell you unequivocally, there is not enough money that we can make to continue to maintain what we have to do on dredging and on the terminal and on the stormwater requirements. So from our perspective, our recommendation will continue to be support your core businesses. That doesn't mean we wouldn't be out looking at appropriate real estate transactions. As you know, we've got the money aside. But frankly, from my perspective, we've lost the balance of that whole avenue of what are you going to do about your basic business? And I think the strategic plan process that we're going through is going to help answer that question.
I wouldn't dispute that, but my recollection of what came out of that clarification meeting was a little different. I think that what they reviewed of existing court stuff was agreed to be the first step. But my understanding was that the commission was seeking something a little broader. But I think that's a question only they can answer, and they will have a chance if you guys will pose that question.
John, my recollection of the meeting was what Ed took away from it as well. It was more of a clarification of it. And then so yes, that would be a logical question. Maybe.
So I thought it was more than just real estate reinvestment.
I got a process question here.
Yeah.
So we are a little subcommittee, or a mighty subcommittee, and we have one draft report out, and we had another draft report out. We have summarized these draft reports with our colleagues here on the advisory committee, but we haven't shared them, I don't think. And now we're talking about going to the commissioners for a discussion of scope and the value of what we drafted. I think there's another step before we go to the commissioners, and that is for the subcommittee to agree on a draft report. And I don't think we've got that agreement. And then after that, because we've had discussions which gave, for instance, Clyde's comments about public participation and different things we could do here. We didn't change these criteria in the draft reports. We ought to meet as a subcommittee and re-examine those and see if, how valuable they are, or how much should they be changed or revised or modified. Get to an agreement at the subcommittee level, go back and put out R3 of our draft report, share that with the advisory committee so that everybody can sharpen their pencil and come up with their ideas, come to a consensus with the advisory committee about what we want to go forward to the commission, and then go to the commissioners.
That's a good idea, but I'd like to have the other side of the coin, Frank, namely that we aren't going to get many opportunities to sit down with the commissioners around the table. We have one now. And without basically giving them what you have put together in draft form so far, I don't think it would be out of order to ask them, is this all you wanted? They weren't finished with it yet. Did you expect something more or not?
So I disagree with that. I think because right now our discussion is so vague that it will puzzle the commissioners, and they will certainly give us their opinions, which is wonderful, and that will puzzle us.
I agree that we've taken it this far. I think we owe it to this group and to the commissioners.
To wait.
Well, to have a draft report.
To have something tangible in
We
our
need something
hands.
tangible.
Something
That we
tangible.
can throw
we can sharpen
underneath
the
their
pencil
nose and
against.
go, number one, are we on the right track? Is this what you asked for? And I think we are on the right track, based on, what Ed talked about, because that's what I took away from the commissioners as well. I think Commissioner McGregor was more of a, kind of a broader view, if you will. But I think you're right on point with it. I think that we have to get a draft together.
But now, to address Don's concern that, if there's only a joint commission meeting once every year, or
Yeah, that's the killer.
So can we just, suppose we had a draft, we had a consensus here at the advisory committee that, this is good enough to go forward to the commissioners. Can we go to a public commission?
The whole thing's public anyway, so there's nothing to preclude.
So we could go to any of the Monday evening meetings then, or a special study meeting, present this
Maybe
material?
a special
Is
study
that-
session.
Special studies?
But you're subject to the 3-minute limitation.
So the 5 of us each have 3 minutes.
Let me make a few comments that may help move your discussion along on this. And I was going to make this comment anyways, but I have another one to make concerning where you're at right now. First of all, remember tonight's meeting is a special meeting. There's only 2 kind of meetings that this commission can have. One's a regular meeting, one is a special. At the regular meeting, they can add, change, do whatever they want to their agenda. At special meetings, they have to adhere to what is on the agenda. So tonight's agenda, they have to stick to that. We have to stick to it. Staff is obliged by that. You're obliged by that. The commission is not allowed by law in a special meeting to change the agenda.
Item 3 is on the agenda right now.
Right. So keep that in mind. Secondly, I have talked to all 3 of the commissioners and told them, as I have experienced not only with this PAC, and I think this is, as I've said before, I think one of the brightest and robust PACs I've ever seen as far as your involvement, what you're doing, and the incredible amount of commitment that you have put to this. But where we have failed, and I would say this if the commissioners were here, because I told them this, where they have failed, and staff in supporting them, is when they provide you a project, is to scope it out and define what the deliverables are so you don't have to have these discussions. And hopefully the formulation of a project, wherever it is, can be done through discussions, and when you're concluded, we can follow up with a scope of the project, what the expected deliverables are, just like we do in our contracts. So that way you have a clear and concise direction as to what you are doing and what advice you're going to be providing. That's been sorely lacking, and I apologize for that, and I think it would make your meetings and your jobs a lot more fun and more efficient.
Absolutely. How do you?
Yeah, the public participation report, we did have a work plan.
Yes, you
Was,
did.
and I recall at a previous meeting asking if the real estate task force had a work plan. And Lisa said yes, but,
She said no.
I thought we said no.
Okay, well, so that's, that is something we
And
need to get from
I
them.
helped confuse the matter, as you recall, the things I had talked about, and that were a little broader based on the money. So we got off to a very bad start on that, and hopefully lesson learned for all of us, and hopefully next time as we go through this, we can.
I feel like I'm going to witness stand on that.
Yeah, I have one more very important comment. One of the problems with the public participation report is nobody from the public came to review the first draft that was put before the PAC. And, we have a member of the public here, and I want to make sure that somehow we do our public notification process so they show up at the beginning. Because we had a great turnout when the public participation report was in its final draft, and we'd only budgeted, a half an hour for them and a half an hour for ourselves, whereas on the first draft, we spent 2 hours doing a page turner. And that's when it would have been much more helpful to have the kind of input that we didn't get until after the report was final. So that's something else to consider in the process of finalizing the report on the real estate investment task, is making sure that there's adequate time for public input.
Can I ask one more question? I know we've beat to that. Is it appropriate, and maybe I pose this question to Ed, how do we define, is it an appropriate question to the commissioners to ask them again what they want of us? Because that seemed to be the issue that we just, you know,
I'm only one member, but I think it's appropriate.
Oh, I would certainly agree with that, and again, I think it gets back to defining, but remember, you're dealing with, just as you're all independent-minded folks, you have 3 independent-minded people, but at the end of the day, 2 of them have got to agree, and that gets down to, frankly, the assignments that are made, so that we can be clear on going forward with it.
right, okay.
So are you guys cool now?
Sorry. I don't know if I can
Yeah.
handle that.
You're gonna go ahead and do a report.
They called
You're on the agenda of the commission meeting to basically present some results and ask.
The clearer we can get our chances, the better off we are.
Excuse me, I put that on there, and all I wanted to do was get a status report. Where was it at? Because the last meeting I attended, I heard Lisa's report wasn't quite clear, and so I didn't intend to have you try to give reports. Do whatever you feel is appropriate. It's just where are you at on it, and that's, I guess, where you want to raise the question of, was this the assignment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
So to that end, Steve, you know, you could, when you outbrief this in 15 minutes or whatever, you say, this is what we got a draft. This is our next steps. This is what we plan to do. Over.
With it. Fair enough.
Okay, I have about 10 minutes left, and I'm on the agenda to item 7. So I'll briefly tell you why I asked Brother John. I've discussed this with you a little bit, but I don't think the commission resolution that establishes the PAC is very clear in terms of the kinds of expertise or input the commission seeks from the PAC. And having sat on the PAC for 4 years, I think there's a definite sense of the kinds of questions the commission seeks to have answered by the PAC. I could put it almost in four categories: business, economics, sport operations, and scientific. I can't see anything the PAC's ever dealt with that's been outside of that, the broadest context of those. And yet, the whereas that begins I'm sorry to break copies of the resolution, talks about creating a citizen advisory committee to advise the board on matters of public concern. That's a much broader definition. And if I were a citizen who didn't have some of those expertises and sought to be on this committee, and I filed an application and discovered in 6 weeks that I hadn't been accepted, and I would have asked, what criteria did you have to decide who you were going to select and who you weren't going to select? I've sort of harkened back to about a year ago, when Lisa Cosmetto was our chair, and she came back at having worked with you, and I think the then chair of the commission. She said we've got a tremendous slate of people, and they're all highly qualified. Well, I don't know yet what basis they use to determine what people were qualified and what people weren't qualified. And I think the public has a right to know, before they even apply, what kinds of expertise or what kinds of topics the commission generally is going to lay on the court. So my recommendation is that it really isn't our job to determine that. It's going to be you and the commissioners that actually draft the resolution that you ultimately submit to the commission for approval.
The resolution, the current resolution says the interview team will evaluate each applicant based on past volunteer, public-private work experience or knowledge regarding the Port of Olympia, and reasons for wanting to serve the PAC. I think those are pretty clear criteria, and what I like about them is they are as broad as the PAC's purpose, which is to advise on matters of public concern. So I think it would be a mistake to say, well, we need a PAC that has engineering experience, we need a PAC that has public relations experience, and all of those things. So I actually think the current resolution, which doesn't get updated annually.
Not annually, no. Actually, we have a new resolution coming up at the meeting this coming Monday, the 25th. So when you get your package, you can look at proposed changes on that.
Well, the only thing I can say
Can you give us a hint about what the substance is?
It actually defines more the technical natures of how long you serve. Frankly, we got hung up in our own weeds here that when we get an alternate that replaces, we're trying to follow the elected officials approach, which is the commissioner leaves and someone fills them, they serve out the term, etc. and we got a little off kilter where we're trying to have a rotation every year of at least 4 members, and we're really out of kilter on that. So some of the redrafts are really addressing more the technical nature. 2 is picking up with the assumption that the commission will approve the Port of Olympia Advisory Committee, POAC change is in there, but there's not a lot of substantive change in there. I'm going to give you one example. This probably won't help at all, and I appreciate quite your comments, but just to your comment of, people that weren't accepted. We had, typically we get really some outstanding applications, and it is a very difficult process, I think, for all 3 people, and each commissioner has sat through those. And we had one person who was highly qualified, lives in this community, but the reason that, and was a woman whose business is up in Seattle, and for the most part, after we got through the interview, we all leave her own name, but we all concluded this person was a person that really was part of the community of Seattle, King County, not Thurston County. And that was the only reason. Otherwise, if you looked at every other qualification, we probably wouldn't have proposed her.
So what kind of expertise did she have?
Well, I don't even recall, and frankly, I don't want to publicly say what they were, but she was a well-qualified person, professional.
I'm not going to debate the issue, but I just think there ought to be a clear sense of what kinds of input the commission looks for.
I would like to thank Claudia for a very clear, concise statement. I agree with what she said. And the only thing that I would add is that I think it's at their, what they're looking for. It's not for us to decide or set any kind of policy. And quite frankly, I was led to believe that I was hopefully, or I was encouraged to apply because I represent labor. And I work at the port, so I would like to think that I'm kind of included in the whole thing. And I'm not, thinking that lots of people are beating the door down from where I work. It's kind of a big thing, and, we're not super educated, and we don't all have degrees and everything, but I would like to think that they selected